Welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday night, November 16th, and we are beginning first with a public hearing, and this is for multi-housing revenue bonds. Council was in receipt of a letter on September 30th about the Athens Garden Apartments, and we were contacted by the Ledick Realty Company, LLC. And this is for rehabilitation and equipping of a 44-unit residential rental facility for individuals and families of low and moderate income. The particular place for this apartment complex is in the Plains, but it is within.
No, it's in the city.
It is within the city.
300 West State Street. It's by the Innovation Center down in that branch.
Thank you. Okay, and so we have a sign-in sheet for those who are here. If you would please indicate your name on that sign-in sheet so we have that as a record for our public hearing. And we will accept comments.
We have representation
questions
from the organization, the company.
Okay.
Elise, is it? Hulse? Okay. She can probably give us some particulars. There is a sign-in sheet that she's holding in hand if somebody hasn't signed in.
Part of the way around, I know that.
Okay. Anybody miss signing in? As a public hearing, it's always good to have a record of who the public is. So if you feel like you're public, sign in.
And if what you'd like to do is please come over to the podium and let us know your name, or both of your names, so that we have that for the public record.
Sure. My name is Elise Hollis, and I'm with the firm of Jones Walker in Cincinnati, Ohio.
My name is Key Kalame, and I'm with Ledick Realty Company out of Montgomery, Alabama.
And I'll just summarize for everyone what the request is. This is having to do with an issue of bonds, tax-exempt bonds, that will be issued by an out-of-state issuer. The issuer is a Wisconsin-based entity that was formed as a joint venture by the National League of Cities and the National Association of Counties to alleviate the burden on local governments who are not in a position to issue tax-exempt bonds for projects within their communities or don't wish to do so. And this particular issuer is involved in this transaction primarily because the borrower for the bonds is financing a project both in Cincinnati and in Athens, Ohio. So there's no other entity that has jurisdiction over both of those areas but for the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. They declined to be the issuer in this case because their role is to issue tax credit bonds and single-family bonds, and they were not in a position to analyze or underwrite this credit, so they preferred that somebody else take that position. So that's why we went to PFA. The Internal Revenue Code requires that for all tax-exempt bonds that are issued, the persons in the affected governmental unit, so that is the city of Athens, it would also be the county of Athens, but in this case we approach the city, have an opportunity to be heard and voice any concerns, questions, and just have a public hearing on the record about the project. So that's what this is. It's pursuant to the TEFRA Act. It's 147F of the Internal Revenue Code. And the issuer's policies and procedures also require that hearing so that local entities have input since they are serving as an issuer in a state, not their own. So that's what the hearing is about. The Internal Revenue Code requires that after the public hearing, the issuer or the host, in this case the city, adopt a resolution just approving the issuance of the bonds by the issuer, stating that the public hearing was heard and was held and that no objections, or that the city itself has no objections to the project. So that's what we're here for tonight. Key Kalame is with Ledick Realty Company. They are the developer of this project, and they are the ones who have the project under contract currently and will be handling the acquisition and redevelopment of the project. So if there are project-specific questions, Key can
And we'll
answer
also
that.
be the management agent. So our company will be the firm that manages the property on an ongoing basis.
And are there questions? Yes, Mayor Weil.
Just so you know, our resolution 14-15 is the resolution that will cover this tonight. It's a first reading, 3-reading resolution? Okay. I guess the questions I have are, have you acquired the property already or in the process?
In the process. So
Okay.
this is one of the steps that we must take in order to close on our transaction.
Okay, and do you plan to do any type of redevelopment? When you say development, you've used that word several times. Are you planning to do modifications of sound court, upgrades, or what? Do you
We
have any?
are. We are doing roughly $150,000 worth of improvement to the property. We're doing some concrete repairs to the parking lot, upgrading some of the residence units, new appliances, cabinets, countertops, window repairs. The property just has some deferred maintenance items that need to be addressed for the residents.
Okay. And your management will be on site, of course, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Those are the questions I had.
Questions of council members?
I just wanted to make clear, there are two apartment complexes there. This is the first?
This is the first, the front.
The front part of the buildings. Okay. Oh, I'm unplugged. Okay. I wanted to make clear what that was.
It's actually two. I think both were sons of
And this is a public, any other questions of other council members here tonight regarding the financing or the actual facility? And are there any questions or comments from members from the audience?
One more question. This ties you into low and moderate housing units for how long? Isn't there a time limit on that type of stuff? I'm asking because I don't know.
Well, this property is actually already deemed that way. Through HUD, it has what's called a housing assistance payment contract, and that's something that stays with that property. So that's something that's never going to go away.
Oh, okay.
So this is a way that allows us to come in and make improvements to a property that is somewhat limited in the amount of revenue that it's going to bring in, because you're limited at the amount that you would charge the residents for rent.
Okay, I see. That's why I was asking.
The tax exempt bonds come with an additional restrictive covenant that lasts for 15 years that ensures that even if the HAP contract were to go away, that these bonds, the proceeds would be used for low and moderate income individuals. So,
Thank you. That's very important to hear because we have so limited amount of that type of housing in this community.
And we never, we acquire properties a lot, and it's always our intention to, we never go in and displace anyone. That's not what we want to do. We do a lot of our rehabs with the residents in place so that they're not inconvenienced, burdened, things like that. So as far as the residents, there should be no change as far as what's there, of course, unless there's a problem. Our management company would take care of that. But
They'll have to sign a new lease with you.
they will have to sign a new lease when their lease expires.
Okay. So there will be rollover lease.
Right.
Yes, Councilmember
I'm
Patterson.
curious, how many units are vacant right now?
I think there's probably 2 vacants. It's a pretty high occupied property.
Okay.
And through our purchase property, before we buy something, we of course do significant amount of due diligence. And over the past 3 years, that property's been 95% or higher occupied.
So will some of the tenants that are there, if they're still there, and as the renovations take place, will you just be cycling them into another unit while the one unit is being
No, they
upgraded?
are able to stay in their unit while we do the work. And usually they're very excited. They're thrilled to get new appliances and cabinets and countertops. So we try to do the work, obviously, during the day, and it's a short period of time. They're not without water, power, anything like that. And our management staff works really close. We have the office open if somebody needs to come in there and get something while their unit's being rehabbed. But in our experience, it's pretty minimal inconvenience, and they're generally very excited about what's to come.
One last comment, or question, really. So with the improvements, you just mentioned appliances a second ago, is the plan energy efficient appliances?
To the extent that we can, yes. And I think it's also important, I didn't know, we're doing a playground there. There's a lot of children that live at that property, and they have minimal to dilapidated playground equipment. So that's another kind of, biggie that I think we'll be adding.
Do you have other properties that you manage in Ohio or in this general area?
We do. We have one in Cincinnati that we manage, and we have another property that we've owned since 2008 in northern Kentucky. And then we're in the process of purchasing 3 more. One in Dayton, one in Loveland, and one in Kenton.
This sounds great to me.
Yes.
I should
Sort of
probably
Safety
notice
Director Mosley.
Thank you. Who does your housing quality standards inspections? Do you contract with the Metropolitan Housing Authority or?
Well, we have, HUD does a lot of ours because this property is regulated under that HAP contract. So most of our stuff is actually the HUD offices that come out and do a lot of that, and the contract administrator. So the contract administrator that's administering that HAP contract is who will come out and do those inspections, which is usually the housing authority.
Thank you. And to the playground, we did in our safe routes, your safe routes to school, we did a route that gets them from Garden Apartments back to West Elementary.
Good.
Good, okay. Yeah,
And the reason for the question about the energy efficiencies, there's a program going right now for rebates for energy efficient appliances, et cetera, so it's ongoing and active, so you might want to jump in on that.
Definitely.
For multifamily housing as well.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Questions from the audience? Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. It's good to have someone here in person being able to answer the questions and
Wonderful.
Thank you for
about the
having us.
facility and explain the funding on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, it's 7:15, so we will consider the public hearing for the multi-housing revenue bonds closed. And as mentioned, we'll be reading a resolution later in the council meeting tonight. We'll now move on to our regular session of council. And with a brief bit of explanation, we'll have the regular meeting where we will read some ordinances. We will have some announcements. It is a regular session of council. We will have an opportunity for citizens to speak on items that are not listed on the agenda. I would remind folks that they can make comments, but it's not an opportunity for us to engage, for council members to engage in discussion or answer questions when we have that opportunity for citizens to speak. We'll then be going into executive session for collective bargaining, and then after that, we will be adjourning. So that's just an overview of our meeting tonight. The first item of our business, I didn't finish it. Okay. Oh, the minutes. Oh, okay. Our first item of business is to establish the quorum, and we do have all members of council present tonight. And we will now move on to communications. If any of our elected city council members have communications that they would like to relay, that they have received. Yes, Councilmember Cochran.
I would just like to remind folks that the Community Energy Savers program that Member Patterson referred to earlier is ongoing, and folks can sign up for that at communityenergysavers.com.
Okay. Communications from other elected officials. We will have an opportunity for announcements later on in the meeting, too, as well. But Mayor Weil, do you have any communications?
Nothing really much, unless I'm forgetting something.
I confuse communications and announcements.
Okay.
Sorry, as did I.
That's all right. It's okay.
I guess the only thing I could think of is there will be Thanksgiving days coming up next week, so trash delay, recycle delay.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't know what else.
Communications from Law Director Eliason? Communications from the Auditor's Office? Okay. Then we'll move on to ordinances for third reading. The first one is 9915, an ordinance amending the Athens City Code to establish Title 17, Municipal Income Tax. And this is introduced by all council members. And Councilmember Reisner, I know you've headed much of the discussion, as has the Auditor's Office on this. And this is our bill amending our tax code to reflect a new state law that has passed that gives us new reporting requirements effective on January 1.
That's correct. Our present tax code is Title 15, and that's what we're governed under right now. This is adding a new section to our municipal code section, or Title 17. And if all goes well, then this will replace Title 15. Well, okay. Would you care to talk to about
it? We can't replace Title 15. This will be in addition to Title 15 because there are people that we're currently collecting taxes for. So at this point, there will be no replacement of Title 15.
Okay.
Thank you.
I stand corrected.
Thank you for the clarification. That's from Deputy Auditor Kreider. Mayor Weil.
A couple of things. One is that all the expectations of this, being that it's supposed to make a uniform tax code, municipal tax code, will probably result in an income loss in general, from what we've heard from the tax administrator. And again, I would like to give kudos to the auditor's office as well as the tax administrator to do a lot of work to get this done. It may make it easier for businesses across the state, but at the same time, it's been a lot of work for a lot of different cities and municipalities. I've talked to other mayors, and it's a chore. And again, everything they're expecting is to be a net loss when it's all said and done. So I want to reiterate that.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Fall.
I want to say thank you to Tina Timberman for all her work that she's done through this whole process, being a witness in front of the state and things like that. And I want to reemphasize the fact that this is a net loss, once again, for local communities and municipalities that the state has inflicted upon us, and it could be a large loss. And so that's going to reduce and impact our budget. So if people are upset about it, they should let their Congress people know up in the state. So.
Okay, so we have read the ordinance for the third time. Do we have a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance? Okay. We have from Councilmember Canterbury a move to approve, a second from Councilmember Cochran. All those in favor of approving this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 102-15, an ordinance accepting a replacement bus for the City of Athens transit system purchased through the Hocking Athens Perry Community Action Programs, known as HAPCAP, funded by a federal grant. And this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. I move to adopt 102-15.
Second.
We've spent quite a bit of time talking about this over the last few weeks, but bottom line is we need to do this. Though HAPCAP is the one that manages the buses and fills out the grant and does all that, but we need to run it through our system.
Again,
Yes,
this
Mayor.
is for a
Wow.
2016 bus. It will be one of the low ones that will not require lift, wheelchair lift. It's 100% paid for from the capital budget, ODOT capital budget, if I understand. So Mr. Lockman is trying to get a head start on it because it takes about 5 to 6 months to get the buses in. So he wants to see it sometime before the end of next year.
Okay. Okay, any other comments from council members? I know the Athens transit system is really important to our community. Mayor Weil, I know you've helped support it for a long time, and HAPCAP seems to be doing a good job of managing the program. Okay. All those in favor signify for approval of this motion ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 105-15 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 90-15, granting a revocable license to the owner of 108 Sunnyside Drive to allow a fence on the city right-of-way, and this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I move that we adopt 105-15.
Second?
It's pretty straightforward, granting a revocable license. The owner had changed, and so we need to amend the 90-15.
Okay. And so these are revocable, but they are renewed every 10 years. Okay. We have a motion and a second for approval of this ordinance 105-15. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 107-15 is an ordinance amending Section 4, vacations, of Ordinance 122-14, the non-union personnel fringe benefits package, and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to amend.
Second.
The reason for this amendment is we've had to make some changes to address a couple of points that weren't considered when this was originally submitted for its first reading. Copies of the proposed change language is in the various council members' box here online. It's under meetings 11, 16, 15, 107-15, proposed amended language. So we can read it in the spirit of paperless transactions here. If you like, I can read the changes. Essentially, what we're changing from the original first reading ordinance are sections E, F, and G. Let me go through this. We are striking out the sentences, effective the first pay period in 2016, employees shall be permitted to accrue and carry over. That's been struck. Inserted is employees in excess of vacation credits up to 3 times their earned annual length of service, as defined in sections 4A, which remains unchanged. Strike out any carryover, but insert as of the final pay in December 2016 and the final pay of each year thereafter, striking out any excess carryover of the three-year accrual, and continuing on, will be forfeited with no compensation from the city. That's section E. I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Okay. Section F. As of the last pay in December 2015, employees holding hours, striking out in excess of their continuing over the limit described in section 4E, striking out as of the last pay in December 2015, continuing shall be given 5 years to use, striking out bringing, continuing said vacation overage, striking out credits into compliance, continuing, and shall use at least 1/5 of the overage, striking out vacation credits each calendar year as approved by their immediate supervisor, period. If said 1/5, strike out or, continuing 20% of said vacation overage is not used by the employee at the end of the 26th pay period each year of the 5 years, said overage for that year shall be forfeited with no compensation from the city. Section G, employees with excess hours at the end of the last pay in December 2015, striking out subject to sections E and F, and then continuing, will continue to accrue annual vacation credits throughout the 5-year period in accordance with their length of service as defined in sections 4A. The main reason for this, for these changes was that in some of our employees who have accrued vacation, who are at they don't have a tremendous excessive overtime, but they have 3 years accrued. Under the old language, as they got into the new year, they would begin to use up the money, the vacation they had banked in the 3 years as permitted. And during the year, they would be using the vacation that is being accrued during that year, but it would end up as a net loss by the end of the year. They would no longer be able to put 3 years into their bank. So this would prevent that. They would be able to keep that maximum of 3 years. So when they retire, they can draw it out. And that's why we... I'm sorry.
Thank you for that explanation. So we have an amendment. And we have a motion and a second to amend the rules as read by Councilmember Reisner. So all those in favor of amending 107-15 as read, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay. And now, so the ordinance has been amended and read for the first time.
I would like to move to suspend the rules for 107-15.
Second.
Okay, and the reasoning?
The reason being is we're simply running out of time to pass this legislation. We're now at November the 16th. Next week we have a committee night we do not meet on the 5th week of this month, so we can't meet then. The next time we meet is the 7th of December, at which point we're going to be introducing the full non-benefits, non-union benefits package and trying to proceed to adopt that. So this needs to be done before we get to that stage. Usually I don't like to suspend the rules on legislation like this or any other legislation, but I think we're just in a time crunch and we just simply have to get it through.
So we're needing to fold these new regulations into our non-union fringe benefit package, which does need
Before
to
the new one's adopted.
be passed
Yes.
before the new one's adopted. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules for 10715. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay, the rules have been suspended. Councilmember Reisner.
I move to adopt 10715
Second.
for all the reasons stated.
Okay.
Councilmember
And do we
Patterson.
have any comments? Yes.
I just want to be really clear with this as I understand this, and it's basically, let me kind of put this into some form of layman's terms. If I, as an employee, can accrue 5 weeks a year, and I can accrue, in a 3-year period of time, obviously 15 weeks.
15 weeks.
Coming up to December 31st of my 3rd year of having that level of accrual, I am essentially, the way I think about it, I can continue to accrue into the following year because I'm only up to my max by December 31st. And so I can continue to accrue
correct, yes.
throughout the next year as long as I'm being prudent and wise in my planning to where I'm going to use those 5 weeks to keep it down.
That's right.
If I come up to December 31st of that 4th year or whatever, and I have over my 15 weeks, then I will lose it.
You lose it.
Okay. I just
So
want to
we're
make sure
back
that
to
we're clear
use it or
on
lose it.
how that reads, so that nobody is having, as it was stated some time ago, their property, and I get that, in terms of your leave and what you're earning, that that's not being unduly capped or taken away or anything like that.
Unduly taken away, right.
Okay, any other comments?
I have
Councilmember
one other
Pappy.
comment, just to clarify. So one of the reasons we're here tonight is because there were a pool of employees who had quite a bit of time that they had accrued.
Yes.
So how does they need to be using up?
They have 5 years.
And you're saying they have 5 years to use up anything beyond their 3 years?
Yes. But during that 5 years, they have to be using up a minimum of 1/5 per year of what's been accrued in excess of the 3-year.
And that's possible. I mean,
This would be, yes.
without putting the city in a hardship with those employees, because we did hear that conversation.
That was based more on a more restrictive timeline that was presented at first. This one sounds equitable, meaning, as Councilmember Patterson stated, you go to the end of the year, you can accrue as you do throughout the next year, but you're going to be capped if you don't utilize that. So there's 2 separate groups of employees here. We're talking about the ones that have the excessive vacation accrual, and we're talking about all the other non-union employees.
But you're not going to be capped. I mean, careful with that word you just mentioned, capped a minute ago. You will lose it at the end of that 4th year if you are over. That's key, I think, with this piece of legislation. That just knowing you can still accrue, your accrual rights are not taken away or benefit. But again, you have to be smartly planning in how you go forward and using your vacation time.
Councilmember Fall, a comment?
Also, I think at the end of the 5 years where we're encouraging the people who have huge overage, as is being said in this ordinance, then at the end of that 5 years, everybody's going to be kind of the same, and that everybody can plan, and then we won't have huge surprises. So that's the ultimate, is to have good benefits and have the city be able to plan and such.
Have a clear
I think that
policy.
this does that over much negotiation.
And I would just add that there shouldn't be any surprises at all. We should be, after this legislation, it should be pretty clear.
Do we have any other comments? Councilmember Cochran?
I would just like to add that while this 5-year amount that is being allotted for folks to come into compliance with the policy may be equitable for employees, I perceive it as not necessarily being fair to the taxpayers who are going to be paying for compensating folks for their vacation time taken at a rate much higher, perhaps 5 years from now, than they would be today. And I think, we've heard from folks that this is not necessarily the financially prudent way to go. I understand we're treading a fine line here of being fair to folks who've been operating under a lack of enforcement of a policy for a number of years. But my concern is that it's not a financially prudent decision to allow 5 years for this.
Any other comments from council members or administration? Mayor Weil.
So the way I understand it right now is that you'll have two pools. Somebody, let's say, taking Member Patterson's example, somebody who's making adding 5 weeks a year to their accrual to their bank of vacation. If at this point they're at 15 weeks, come the start of this year, January 2016, they would basically they'd acquire another 5 weeks, so they'd be at 20. They have to shed those 5 weeks before next December of 2016. That's example one, if I'm understanding the thrust of this.
That's right.
On the other hand, if somebody has, let's say, 20 weeks at this point, they're actually in that first category where they have over-accrual. So therefore, they're going to have to shed 1/5 of that, or really 1 week and a couple days, because they're still adding another 5 weeks, I guess. So they'd have to actually shed almost 2 weeks per year to stay under that, in that 20% range. Is that how I understand? Now, my math may be off in terms of percentages, but so that's the intent, is that they can actually shed those over a 5-year term.
Yes.
Right? Okay. I after all the changes and modifications, I think I have 3 different versions in front of me, and none of them sound like what you just said. That's why I was asking. I'm one electronic version short, and it's all on paper here.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that to reach 15 years, 25 years is continuous service to the city of Athens. So these, again, are long-term employees.
Do we have any other comments? Deputy Auditor Kreider.
I'd just like to add that the corrected language hasn't been provided through the auditor's office. It sounds like it's confusing. I hope that someone will at some point provide some more guidance on this language. Thank you.
It's absolutely our intent, to be clear, and we will. Thank you for communicating that. Okay. Any other comments? All right. So we've amended it, suspended the rules, have a motion to, and a second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Any abstentions? Okay. So we have one in opposition. The ordinance is approved. And we'll move on now to ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 108-15, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $100,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of acquiring a new fire truck and related equipment, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
I would point out this is actually for the ladder truck and not the pumper truck. So it says new fire truck, so I don't know if it's a qualification, but I'd like to think of the ladder truck being new as well.
Yeah, so do I.
This is the newer, maybe.
Okay.
But I think it's, okay, thank you for clarifying for us. Ordinance 109-15, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $550,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of improvements to its municipality's wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 11015, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA state agreement for a bridge painting project on Athens State Route 682 and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Pappy. We now have a series of ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 11115 is an ordinance authorizing a contract extension of the city's third-party administrator for medical insurance and prescription coverage and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Is there anyone from the administration that would like to speak to this?
And this is, as our HR director is coming forward, this is part of what was discussed in committee last week, and this is an extension of our third-party administrator. It's an annual renewal.
Right. We used to have a 3-year renewal, and because of upcoming mandates that we may have with the Affordable Care Act, we wanted the opportunity to be able to shop different providers if we needed to on a yearly basis. And this year we've decided to stick with UMR, which is a United Healthcare administrator.
Why do you call it an extension of the contract? Wouldn't it just be a brand-new contract, only with the same provider?
I'm sorry.
Okay, this is called an extension. An extension would mean that we have a contract and we are in the process of somehow making modifications, changes, or something, and we need more time. So we, instead of ending the contract and looking for and instituting a new contract, you would extend the contract. But in this case, it's a new contract, isn't it? The old contract's expiring?
It's a continuous renewal.
Okay.
It used to be that every 3 years, yes, we would do that evaluation. Mm-hmm. Now we want to do an evaluation every year just in case.
Okay, that's clear.
So,
Okay.
any other questions?
All right, any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you,
Sure.
Ms. Galbraith, for extending that explanation. For Ordinance 11215, this is an ordinance establishing the maximum age limitation for an original appointment to the Athens City Police Department, introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me read this ordinance. It's rather short. As you say, it's an ordinance establishing the maximum age limitations for an original appointment to the Athens City Police Department. Pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code, Section 12441, the City of Athens hereby establishes age 40 as a maximum age limitation for an original appointment to be to the Athens City Police Department. I believe the reasoning is that the pool of qualified talent out there at this particular age is there, and we should be taking advantage of it. And it just doesn't seem prudent if we have very qualified personnel who are over our present, which I believe is 35, who are, say, 36. Perhaps they've come out of the military. They may have been military police of some type, or maybe an officer at some other institution. They've moved to Athens. We have a position that's opened up, and I'm sorry, even though you have tremendous experience and qualifications, you just don't meet our age limit. And I think today, with the way people live longer, they're in better health, and it just doesn't make any sense to just say, well, we have to cut it off an arbitrary age of 35. It should go up.
Councilmember Patterson.
Yeah, I mentioned this in committee last week, and it's worth, I think, mentioning again, and that is that a military member who goes into the field of law enforcement within any branch of the military at the age of 18 can retire after a 20-year term of service, retire from the military at the age of 38. And so now we have a 38-year-old who's now not only qualified, but will probably end up being waived from having to go through a lot of the training that we end up putting our police officers through, and probably have to do somewhat training, but it will help streamline as well. I mean, I think that this piece of legislation is extremely prudent for helping select good officers to work on our police force, with experience at that.
Okay, great.
I think it's a win-win.
All right. We have now Ordinance 11315, an ordinance authorizing an extension of the current franchise agreement with the Ohio Power Company for use of the city right-of-way as authorized by Ordinance 14313 and extended by Ordinance 12614 and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. We talked about this last week. It's fairly common now to extend it for a year. And I think that for one reason it's good, because then if something happens and we want to negotiate changes, we have a shorter timeline that we can renegotiate.
And Mayor Weil?
Originally, the first agreement that I was aware of was a 25-year agreement. So I would have to say doing a one-year agreement is keeping on AEP on a very short leash.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance 11415 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to file an application and, if awarded, enter into a cooperative agreement for brownfield cleanup grant funds with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I'd like to suspend rules on this.
Second.
The grant deadline is fast approaching, and so we would like to be able to have the grant put in.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for suspending the rules for 11415. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the rules have been suspended, Councilmember Fall.
Right. This, I ask that we adopt 11415.
Second.
This particular grant application will, if awarded, will be used for the armory. It's for redevelopment and remediation of brownfields, which is areas that have potential or known environmental hazardous or risks. And we know that the armory has some lead paint and asbestos issues, so we'll help to clean those up and get it ready to go to the next phase, whatever we decide.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for adoption of Ordinance 11415. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 11515 is an ordinance amending the Athens City Code Title 11, Business and Regulations, Chapter 11.10, Contractor Registration, and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. This is basically housekeeping that's being pushed upon us because the changes in the tax code that we voted on earlier. I'm sure it's not going to be the last one. So, language.
Okay. And so this moves this particular...
It's cleaning up language.
Cleaning it up? Okay.
And referral, many of our codes refer to other code numbers and such, and ORC code
So
numbers.
this is language clarification. Okay, thank you. A resolution for first reading, R1415, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, approving the issuance by the Public Finance Authority of bonds on behalf of AHA Colonial Village, LLC. And this is introduced by all council members. And this is the resolution that follows the public hearing that we held at the beginning of this meeting, and it authorizes the issuance of the public financing of the bonds for this low and moderate income housing and the rehabilitation for the funds that will be needed to rehabilitate the apartment complex. We now have a one reading resolution, R1515. This is a resolution requesting Wayne National Forest withhold consent to the releasing of any lands or mineral rights located within Wayne National Forest's jurisdiction to the Bureau of Land Management for oil or gas leasing prior to conducting an environmental impact statement. And this is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you. This is a one reading resolution. I just want to make sure that all of council has had time, or I can read it, has had time to review it. Has everyone had time to review it?
Not the first one.
So in 2012, early 2012, council, many of these members who are here also sent a resolution with concerns related to drilling in the Wayne National Forest. And since that time, I'm fairly happy with the amount of educational efforts that have occurred in our community, because I do believe that a good portion of our community has been educated to the concerns. On a couple of these whereases, I do just want to mention our aquifer. And we have a shallow aquifer here in the Hocking Valley, where we live here, and drilling in the Wayne National Forest could potentially damage that. And when I say drilling, I'm not talking about the drilling that's been going on prior to horizontal fracking in terms of the high pressure that we now know as horizontal fracking. Because a lot of times people say, well, there's been that kind of drilling going on for many, many years. This is a different type of drilling. It's much more industrialized. The other thing I just want to mention before we move ahead on this is that we learned just in the last couple of days again that a permit has been applied for Athens County for a 10th injection well. And when you have drilling going on, you need to put the injection waste somewhere. And so if this were leased, I think Athens and Athens County are going to find themselves in the middle of a lot of activity. We already are in a lot of activity for the drilling waste. So I believe it's prudent for we as council to pass this resolution.
Other comments from other council members? Councilmember Patterson.
A couple things. One, I think it might be prudent to read this so that those out in TD land are tracking what the resolution actually says. And before you get to that, the second whereas speaks to a resolution 0612, which before looking at this, I thought we had done a resolution, at least passed a resolution looking, requesting a impact assessment of the lands. Do you know if there was ever a reply to that resolution in any way, shape, or form? Even a thank you for spending the time writing a resolution and passing it?
I don't know if the clerk received anything. I don't.
Clerk of court, did we receive our councilor?
Okay. Councilmember Pappy, would you care to go ahead and read the sections for us?
Okay. Whereas, based on a recent public notice for the Bureau of Land Management, the Wayne National Forest and the BLM may again authorize a similar sale of leases without an environmental impact statement. That's an EIS. And whereas, pursuant to Resolution 06-12 adopted on May 7, 2012, Athens City Council must once again state reasons why it objects to the leases and calls for a full environmental impact analysis which clearly reveal the threat such leases would pose to our city's drinking water and thus to our county's economic viability. Whereas Ohio municipalities are required by law to protect the health and safety of their citizens from pollution of their water supply, and whereas the City of Athens drinking water supply is a sole source aquifer adjacent to and recharged by the Hocking River, and significant water withdrawals from the aquifer and or the Hocking River will have a deleterious effect on the city's water supply, which is our duty to maintain. And whereas the water table in our well fields ranges from surface level to 20 feet below the surface throughout the year. And whereas the aquifer that feeds Athens' water supply is shallow, averaging 60 feet below ground level, and is therefore especially susceptible to pollution from surface level and near surface level contamination. And whereas it is the constitutional duty of Athens elected officials to protect the health, safety, and welfare of persons within its jurisdiction. And whereas the 2006 Wayne National Forest Plan explicitly did not address impacts from deep shale horizontal drilling and high-volume hydraulic fracturing, HVHV, and whereas HVHV has been documented extensively for highly significant impacts on water quality, air quality, human health, local economies, and social well-being, and whereas the residents of Athens County have spoken via the Ohio University Community Survey in large majorities about their concerns with the potential impact of HVHV on our community and especially on our drinking water supply. And whereas the National Environmental Policy Act requires that an environmental impact statement be completed to assess any action that may have significant impact on the human environment. And whereas an EIS prior to release of lands to the BLM is the only way that our community's water, air, and economy can be assured of protection from damage by HV on Wayne lands. And whereas sustainable economic development for Athens and surrounding areas require clean and safe drinking water, clean air, and a good quality of life, all of which will be threatened by damage from HV to essential and irreplaceable water and air resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Athens, Athens County, Ohio, that Section 1, the City of Athens, once again calls upon the Wayne National Forest to complete an environmental impact statement analysis prior to consent to the release of any surface or subsurface rights of oil and gas leasing under its jurisdiction. Section 2, the city recognizes that Wayne National Forest is legally obligated under the National Environmental Policy Act to consider regional impacts of significant activities on any and all Wayne National Forest lands. Furthermore, Wayne National Forest is under legal obligation to consider how leases on its land are cumulatively to the total impacts that will be experienced in our region. The Wayne is further obligated by NEPA to conduct an IES with full public input and public assessment for sufficiency before engaging in an action with potentially significant impacts on the human environment in which the forest is located. In accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, which authorizes the EIS process, that all significant impacts from potential HV activities be assessed and a full range of alternatives be considered with full public input and assessment for sufficiency before any lands or subsurface rights are released to the BLM for oil and gas leasing. These include potential economic, social, and environmental impacts on the region. Section 4. The city shall be kept informed of all aspects of the EIS process, including all public hearings and meetings, and shall be supplied with all draft reports. Section 5, the ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from council members? Yes, Councilmember Cochran.
Thank you. I would just like to voice my support for this resolution. I think it's unfathomable that public lands can be used for such purposes. And, we spoke in the resolution of regional impacts. And if we look at regional impacts of hydraulic fracturing in our community and its region, we have to factor in the economic impact it's had on our farming community already and will continue to have. When we factor in injection wells that have driven away some of our local farmers already, as well as some of our local homeowners, not necessarily within the city limits, but in the surrounding community. So this industry does not contribute to building a sustainable and healthy community or economy. And I fully support sending this resolution to the Wayne National Forest.
Yes, Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I, too, want to echo my support. When I take an oath of office for this position on council, I don't take it lightly. And when considering the health and safety and welfare of the citizens of Athens and the surrounding area, it's important. It's a big deal. I completely support this. Thank you.
Mayor Weil.
There is a public forum. It's Wednesday, I believe, 6 o'clock or so at the community center. I did go, they had a link. I went to the link. I couldn't find really where this location they're talking about. It looks like a little bit off of Sunday Creek, eastern branch of Sunday Creek. So I'm unclear of actually the impact and the location. Again, an environmental impact study should be done when you do something like this. The leasing, if you think about it, mineral leasing for gas and oil could just mean injection wells as well. It depends on how you write the lease. So you could get both at one time or both in different areas. Each one's a little bit different. An injection well is a lot more busier and has very little economic benefit to the owners of the property or even the lessees. So Just so you're aware, public forum, and I didn't find that much information at that website. Or maybe I didn't peruse it enough. Did any of you go to it and see anything that was actually useful?
Okay.
The-
Okay.
I
Well,
also-
we're talking about the resolution, so
Yes.
let's try and keep it on that
The
topic.
fact that people will say that this is in a impact that's affecting private property owners, but one of the reasons why we have Wayne National Forest is because to protect lands and uses for the people, not just private property owners. And one should realize that if an interior part of a forest tract is leased, either for injection well or some kind of production well, that also all the other infrastructure has to be put in for that. A lot of times on national forest lands, when they require infrastructures, meaning roads and pipeline, that it's usually subsidized by the Forest Service through the road building project. So a lot of times the taxpayers pay for the infrastructure, which can impact not just the leased piece of the parcel itself, it goes through other properties on that national forest land. So it impacts not only the one lease. And so I think that this is not only for health and safety, but it's also protecting the taxpayers, because the Forest Service does have a notorious habit of building roads that then need a lot of maintenance afterwards.
Okay. So we have Resolution 1515, and I believe we've had the motion and second for approval of this.
Did we have a motion?
Or we have not?
No. I
No,
move
then,
to
please do.
adopt Resolution R1515.
Second.
Okay, now we have a motion and a second for approval of this resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, resolution carries. And thanks for the work on constructing this document.
Perhaps you can send it certified mail.
Let's see. We now have an opportunity for announcements and other business. So announcements, the first one being that we need to have a motion to accept the auditor's report for 2015, the financial reports.
I so move.
Okay, a motion and a second to accept the reports. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, the reports have been accepted. And next week, I know we will be having committee meetings likely.
We have a public meeting on the bed and breakfast.
A public hearing on
Public
that?
hearing.
Okay.
Finance
Starting at
personnel.
7.
Okay, finance and personnel. Do we need service safety? We do.
Service
We need
safety.
service safety.
Getting a big head nod.
Okay. we need- All right. Announcements that other council members may have or administration? Yes,
I
Councilor
have several.
Patterson.
The first one is leaf pickup in the city of Athens has been extended by 3 weeks. I don't know the actual timetable within the precincts or within the zones, but it is being extended by 3 weeks. The second one is that the Aquatic Center facilities meeting with Brandsetter and Carroll, I believe Larry Brandsetter will be there. It'll be at 6 p.m. in the community center in Activity Room B. There's also the Arts, Parks, and Rec Advisory Board meeting, which begins at 5:30.
What day?
Thursday.
Sorry, November 19th. The Commission on Disabilities has their monthly meeting, which will be this Wednesday, also in the community center at 5:30. I wanted to mention that there will be 2 open seats on the Commission on Disabilities. All our commissions and boards are staffed by volunteers throughout the community, so if anyone's interested and would like to be a member on the Commission on Disabilities, you can send your resume to the mayor's office, I believe. And that's all I have.
Any other announcements? Yes, Councilmember Cochran.
I do apologize for jumping ahead earlier with my announcement about the Community Energy Savers Program in the place of communications, but to expand on that a little, Community Energy Savers Program is a program that the city is currently involved in, along with the County of Athens, in a unique partnership with AEP Ohio and Columbia Gas. And through this program, citizens, be they permanent citizens, be they temporary citizens, can engage in energy savings activities, ranging from energy audits, assessments, to getting rebates for old appliances, and each activity will accrue points for the city and county in a competition that will ultimately, we hope, yield a cash prize of nearly $80,000, which will be awarded if we are successful to the Athens County Public Libraries for energy upgrades in their buildings. To participate, you just need to go to energysavers.com, and that will direct you to Athens, and this program is going on through January 31st.
Thank you. All right, we'll have an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that's wishing to speak? Yes. You'll come on up and print your name on the podium, on the sign-in sheet of the podium, and tell us who you are, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, so I'm here tonight to talk about the proposed enforcement of legislation when it comes to Airbnb and the potential even addition, maybe more red tape to that. Me and my wife do Airbnb. We pay our extra bills, our mortgage with it, trying to save a bit of money so we can have a kid in the future. And I know a lot of other people in Athens. I think there's something like over 40 different people in Athens that do Airbnb and make good money out of it doing it. And honest people just trying to make more money. We let people come into our house, us personally, our own house with an extra bedroom, rent it out on the weekends, does well for us. I know other people are doing well by it. And I just saw with some of the local news that was in the media, the new red tape that city government is proposing or talking about enforcing is just another example of how city government is overzealously taxing and controlling everything within your reach. I, like other property owners, already pay a fair share of property tax and income tax. Airbnb and the sharing economy, which is 21st century progressive forward-thinking economy, are dependent on peer-to-peer reviews that the whole world can see. So if I have a bad review, that looks bad on me. So more people won't be booking with me and cost me money in the future. Also, I know that hopefully Uber one day makes it to Athens, and I know some members of city government have talked about already putting that in their crosshairs for proposed regulation and red tape. And like me and the majority of the people in this audience tonight, our generation relies on 21st century technology and the sharing economy. And this proposed red tape is actually, in my opinion, just backwards. Athens prides itself on being progressive and forward-thinking, but this type of assault on 21st century technology is just backwards. We don't have to look too far for just some of the backwards things that come out of some city officials. Just recently, our service safety director referred to hoverboards as wheelie things or back to the future contraptions. Like myself, I think maybe when Service Safety Director Mosley was in high school, that may have been Back to the Future, but we're in the 21st century, and we need to be forward-thinking and not backwards to 21st century technology and the economy. I think most of the people in this room that are my age and of my generation would understand that, and I hope that you guys will allow forward-thinking and less burdensome red tape to the sharing economy that's coming into Athens. So, thank you.
Thanks for coming. And could you announce for us, just so the audience out there knows who you are?
I'm Abe Olisoff. I live at 1 Westfield Place.
Okay. Thanks for taking the time to come tonight and make the comments.
Can I clarify?
No, we're not. We're not. We will have committee meetings next week, and we'll have all kinds of time for discussion. But right now, and I'm only enforcing the same rules on you that I would on us, so the rest of the council members. Right now, I will entertain a motion for us to enter into executive session. If I have a motion in a second, please.
I move that we move into executive session with the service safety director, the mayor, the law director, all members of council, and the president.
For what?
Oh, and HR, please.
For the purpose
For the
of?
purpose.
For the purpose of contract negotiations.
Okay, and I will ask for a vote. Councilmember Butler?
Aye.
Councilmember Reisner?
Aye.
Councilmember Pape?
Aye.
Councilmember Fall?
Aye.
Councilmember Patterson?
Aye.
Councilmember Cochran?
Aye.
Councilmember Cadbury?
Yes.
Okay. It is 8:09, and we will give students who are here and working hard 10 minutes to address questions to council members and administration, and then we'll enter into the executive session.